It's pretty easy to know who's number one. We're going to go 1 to 5. And guess what? Number one, Oregon Ducks. Kudos to the Oregon Ducks. I tell you, what a win for them. 6-0. That win in Austin last Saturday over Ohio State was tremendous. They showed not only that they're capable of playing with and beating Ohio State, but doing it at the line of scrimmage. They did a great job running the football. They did a great job protecting the quarterback. And then they put some pressure on Will Howard in particular late. So when I talk about teams at the top of college football, I think that you've got to win at the line of scrimmage. I thought Oregon won at the line of scrimmage for the most part against Ohio State. So here they come into the Big Ten, and they physically were ready, and the talent certainly is there with the way that Dan Lanning has recruited, retained talent, and then obviously acquired talent through the transfer portal. I thought that was a tremendous win for Oregon, and they're clearly one of, if not the best team in the country after that win. Dylan Gabriel, he stepped up and played one of his best games that I've seen in a long time, and he even left some meat on the bone. There were a couple of throws that he could have made, and they just missed on, but I thought Dylan played exceptionally well, in particular because his style, I always felt like was a bit of a point guard, share the football, short passing type of style, and he hurt him going down the field. He was, 4 of 4 for 177 yards going down the field, 20 or more yards. So that was very good. And those explosive plays, they were tremendous for Oregon, and really the difference in the game when you really look at it and all said is done. Also, my suspicion was correct. I've always said that if there was a young coach that I could buy stock in America, it's Dan Lanning. I've really enjoyed my conversations with Dan Lanning. I think he does a hell of a job with his program in all areas, by the way, talent acquisition, culture creation, the way that he's hired staff, the way that he builds his roster and then coaches his team on the field, the way that he is an outside of the box thinker in terms of the schematics that he has on the field. And that was bore out at the end of the game when my suspicion was correct. The 12 men on the field was absolutely planned. It's a loophole in the rules, and it bought them a free 4 seconds with only 10 seconds left on the clock. So kudos to Dan Lanning, and he confirmed it this week in his press conference.
Much of the commentary world has decided and struck you as a genius, Stan, for the 12-man penalty and declared that it was intentional. Was it indeed intentional to induce the throw one-on-one against Jabbar in that spot?
It wasn't one-on-one. We actually had a safety on top. So there was so it's called dog. It's when you play, but he wasn't in an extremely tight coverage, but he was in dog coverage where he had safety on top of him. And there was a timeout before that. We spent an inordinate amount of time on situations. There's some situations that don't show up very often in college football, but this is one that obviously was something that we have worked on. So you can see the result.
So obviously sheepish there, but a confirmation nonetheless. And now, by the way, some information coming out of like the rules committee from the NCAA, they're going to look at this and maybe adjust the rules so that that loophole doesn't exist. The NFL has already done that, and I'm certain college football will do the same. And like I said, you didn't break any rule. There was nothing. If it's legal, do it. And that's exactly what they did. And I thought that was brilliant. And so Oregon, a very clear number one. Number two is Ohio State. Even with the loss, I think we can all say that, Ohio State went out to an incredibly difficult environment, and they had a 1-point loss, and they were in position where they could have won the football game. So are there things to clean up? Certainly for Ohio State. And Oregon did everything they needed to do to win the game. And should be given the top spot, absolutely. Ohio State, though, with a 1-point loss, you can see where they would be thinking to themselves, okay, let's go back to the drawing board, fix some of the things that did not work for us in that game in Autzen, and we'll be fine. Now, are they in a more precarious situation? Absolutely. Because now they've got to face an Indiana team that is very good, undefeated to this point. They've still got to face Penn State, both of those games on the road, by the way. They still have to play their rival, Michigan, in a game in which they haven't beaten Michigan in the last 3 years. And I don't know if they get to Indianapolis and play for a Big Ten title if they lose any of those games. So their back is against the wall, but that's still certainly a very good team. I thought Will Howard played pretty great. Now, can you say he played great when there were a couple of really key mistakes, drops a snap on a third down, slides too late with 6 seconds left? No, you can't play great when those mistakes are occurring. But outside of that, I thought that Will Howard played really well. The defense has to be fixed, though. The structure wasn't right in the run game. They played man coverage on the outside and yet didn't get to the quarterback, and that was the biggest issue. They've got to find a way to put pressure on the quarterback. I thought there was far too much straight ahead 4-man rush, and those guys didn't win in those one-on-one situations. They don't have a sack in Saturday's game. And now this is too common for Ohio State that they play one of these matchup style games where the talent is equated and they don't put enough pressure on the quarterback. This has happened, I think, too often, and that defensive line has got to play well, and certainly moving forward, still have that Penn State, and we'll find out in about 2.5 weeks if they can fix those wrongs. At number 3, I've got Penn State. That was a huge win for James Franklin and Penn State at USC. I understand that USC's record and ranking aren't going to reflect what I think is the quality nature of their team. Yes, they're 3-3. Totally understand that. But I think that we can all, in good consciousness, say that's a great win for Penn State. In particular, remember how the last 2 regular seasons have gone for the Nittany Lions. This is a team that in their biggest matchups has come up short. Now, those matchups over the last 2 years have been Michigan and Ohio State. Now, they don't have to play Michigan. By the way, they don't have to play Oregon either. So they've got a favorable schedule in the Big Ten, and this was a big hurdle for them. Go on the road all the way out to the West Coast, which they hadn't done, and beat a really good football team. And again, yes, USC is a really good football team, even at 3-3. So that's a huge win for James Franklin and the quarterback, Drew Aller, because Drew Aller, he was in a position where if they lose that game, he's going to be the GOAT, and not in a good way because of the 3 interceptions. So when he's able to put that behind him and go out there and play the way that he did coming down the stretch, and specifically on those 4th down plays, that is a huge hurdle to get over for Penn State and their quarterback. Because the rest of the team, you can see it. It's coming along. You know they can run the football with those 2 running backs. I think that their defense is a solid defense, maybe not quite as great as they've been over the last 2 years, but a very solid defense. And then the big question was, are they going to have a threat in the passing game emerge? And I thought a couple of different threats emerged. The ability to go to Julian Fleming in big situations like 4th down, that's one of them. And Tyler Warren has 17 catches from the tight end position. So a huge win for Penn State and the way that it happened. I like Penn State at number 3. Now it gets interesting because I think everybody would have the same top 3 in the Big Ten. But now it gets interesting. At number 4, drum roll, Indiana. I've got Indiana at 4. Curt Cignetti has done a marvelous job with Indiana. They are 6-0. Cannot wait to get to Bloomington this week. They've got a monster game against a 5-1 Nebraska team on Saturday. It's big noon Saturday. It's big noon kickoff. And we're going to go there and we're going to celebrate this program that has turned it around like that. Cignetti has done a masterful job. This is a team that right now is the number 2 scoring offense in college football, number 1 scoring offense in the Big Ten. They're scoring 47.5 points per game. You look up and down this roster and you realize that Curt Cignetti navigated the transfer portal beautifully. They brought in 27 transfers. 27. I believe that was the second most in all of college football. 13 of those transfers, by the way, followed Cignetti from JMU to Indiana. 9 of those 13 are starting for Indiana. I thought the philosophy that he used, and he's talked about this in some different areas and in conversations that I've had, with and around the program. His strategy was very simple. And by the way, peek your ears up, everybody around college football, all you staff members out there that listen to the show. Curt Cignetti went after players that had a ton of experience on winning programs and had a chip on their shoulder. So it was like this 3-pronged criteria that he was able to go out there and get guys like Curtis Rourke. And Rourke has been sensational for them at quarterback. He's second in the Big Ten in both passing yards and completion percentage. He's been tremendous. And they've got a really good wide receiver room led by one of those JMU transfers. They've got JMU transfers at running back. They've got a good stable of running backs. And then up front, their offensive line is certainly, as a group, playing better as a group than any of their individual players. I think that they're playing above their talent level right now. and Indiana has done a heck of a job. They're playing a really physical Nebraska team on Saturday. That's going to be a great game. I cannot wait to get there. Like I said, big noon kickoff live from Bloomington, 10 a.m. Eastern. And big noon Saturday, we'll be there. Gus, Jenny, and I have the call as Nebraska take on the Indiana Hoosiers. All right, number 5. And truth be told, everybody, there were 7 teams that I considered at number 5. This is when you just get to like this mass of humanity in the Big Ten where regardless of who I put up right here, any of these teams could really beat any of the others on any given Saturday. So I had to go with my gut. My gut tells me that there is a team that is far better than their record, that is legitimately 3 to 4 snaps away from being undefeated in the top 10 team in the country, that has a win over LSU, and that's why USC is my number 5 team in the Big Ten. I know that's going to make a lot of people upset because there are certainly teams out there with better records than USC. And you could say, what in the world? But look at the games that USC has played. They've had a 7-point lead in every one of their losses. Michigan, Minnesota, and Penn State. They're right there. And the bottom line for me is that any of the teams that I did not pick at number 5 could easily lose to USC. Now, 2 of them actually beat USC. And really, the 7 got boiled down to about 4 teams that I was looking at. And the 3 that I really thought about were Iowa, Illinois, and Nebraska. SC is good. Would they definitely beat all of those teams? I'm not totally sure. Have we seen them lose to Michigan? Yes. Have we seen them lose to Minnesota? Yes. Should they have beaten Penn State? Maybe. I keep them at 5, and then here's this Iowa, Illinois, Nebraska kind of like triumphant, and I'm thinking to myself, man, any one of those teams could be number 5. I like a lot of things that each of those do. I think Iowa, if you look at them against Penn State, you hate what you see. Or not Penn State. I'm sorry. Their loss against Iowa State. If you look at Iowa against Washington, then you love what you see. And you love the physicality and what they can do. If you see Illinois against Penn State, this is the one I was thinking of, you don't like what you see. If you see Illinois on the road against Nebraska, then that's pretty good. Nebraska against Colorado, love what you see. The way they played down the stretch against Illinois, you see where I'm getting at. It's just like game in and game out, these are going to be close games. These are the 3 teams that I was considering at number 5, which leaves this great question. At least I would assume it's a great question. It's like, Joel, there's no Michigan up there. Now, maybe none of you were considering Michigan in any of this, but I was. And now this 4-2 team Michigan, aren't they like the great anomaly? Do we really know what Michigan is at this point in the season? You might argue that we don't. So Jack Tuttle comes in after the first quarter against Washington. And at the high end with Jack Tuttle, it's like, well, this team could be a playoff team. Watch out. They could win the rest of the games on their schedule. And then all of a sudden, the 3 series after that, when they're turning the ball over, you're like, oh, well, this isn't going to work. Any team in the Big Ten can beat Michigan. Michigan has such a wild margin between what they could be at their best and what they are at their worst. And really, it all boils down to turnovers. If they can hold on to the football, they're going to be tough to beat. But if they continue to turn the football over, then a lot of teams could beat them. And you look at the rest of their schedule, and it's pretty easily 2 or 3 more losses if they're turning the ball over. Now, Jack Tuttle did not get a lot of reps before going in against Washington. Something inside of me believes that we're going to see the best version of Michigan in the second half of the season than what we saw in the first half, when we saw 3 quarterbacks and a lot of turnovers and just not a lot of stability from that program. But we'll see. As of now, they weren't in my top 5. They weren't really in that group that I was considering for that number 5 spot, but you still reserve the right, like at their best with Tuttle, could they beat anybody left on their schedule? Yeah, maybe. This is still the team that has beaten Ohio State 3 straight times, and Oregon's going to have to face this Michigan team. I just don't think that it's going to be a bargain if Tuttle is retaining the football. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.